Yeah, every single person I've talked to that compares the two notices the same thing. But your IGF-1 on paper will be much lower. It'll be within the therapeutic reference range, all but at the top end.
Well, Derek,
So
I have a little secret for you. My Okay, so let's talk about recovery from. I just thought it would be interesting to mention because we got a lot of questions from our. This time, for the audience to know, we asked for questions from the subscribers, and we got a lot of questions about recovery from injury. I thought there would be some useful things we could mention. Maybe it would help Antoine also. One of the interesting things I came across in research is that beta blockers used either before a surgery or after a surgery dramatically improve recovery. Dramatically. There's a tremendous amount of evidence about this, basically showing you that adrenaline and sympathetic nervous drive, remember your nervous system has a parasympathetic nervous drive and a sympathetic. The sympathetic is not sympathetic, it's fight or flight. That fight or flight nervous drive hampers your recovery from surgery. Does it do the same when you work out? We're not totally sure. I think that taking beta blockers after you work out may improve your recovery.
Yes,
But,
yes, it
yeah,
does.
right?
100%. Yeah, it does.
And that's something we should talk about also. Yeah. Tell me.
Myself and my clients. So I got a lot of clients now on Nabivolol, which was also one of the questions, and their recovery improves. Is it a little bit conducive to fat loss? Yes, absolutely. But when you want the most amount of recovery during the off season, yeah, right. No, to fat gain. Yeah, so you gain a little bit more fat, but it also prevents, or it also lowers the caloric requirement because your heart rate is lower and you're not in this fight or flight state all the time, or you calm down faster post workout. So a lot of my clients run 5 milligrams of Nabivolol right now, and most of my clients, they don't get injuries because I was hammering them. Listen, collagen and gelatin protein instead of the whey protein, because it has building blocks for connective tissue. And I hammer it in all these guys. Stop at the whey protein, switch to collagen and gelatin, and add half a scoop of whey protein for flavoring. That's it. And it makes a world of difference. A world of difference. A world of difference. Really.
Sort of relevant, but as like comparable, I guess, was I remember I was looking at recovery modalities for burn victims in terms of in like a hypercatabolic state with high sympathetic drive, presumably their adrenaline going crazy, and propranolol was like one of the top therapies to intervene. It was like Anavar, like test or something, and then it was like propranolol. I was like, interesting.
I need to calm the whole body down systemically, and then beta blockers are one of the ways to do it. How much it would contribute to collagen synthesis, I'm not really sure, but I think it just downregulates all the stress responses and the inflammatory responses.
It's used in burn victims, even in cardiac surgeries. It improves recovery, improves not only recovery, but survival from the surgeries. I mean, it's tremendous. The other thing I wanted to mention, the main principle, something Antoine did last time, I remember hearing his video, he used BPC 157 and TB 500, if I recall correctly. What's that for? Angiogenesis, the birth of new blood vessels. If you can get blood to the injured area, blood brings your natural growth factors in your body, not just growth hormone, fibroblast growth factor, transforming growth factor, not a great thing. A lot of other growth factors, vascular endothelial growth factor, which promotes angiogenesis. So you really want more blood vessels. Now, generally, do you want a lot of blood vessels? No, because angiogenesis promotes cancer formation. That's the big fear. It's one of the reasons you don't take growth hormone all year round. Well, Steve does, but not all of us do. Take a little bit. He takes a little. He likes growth hormone, but
just a little bit.
The reason I don't. Yeah. But if I had what happened to Antoine happen to me, I might consider it for a short period. In fact, I'm considering it for my own finger right now, even though I'm scared to death of growth hormone. But the angiogenesis is really interesting. Now, I don't understand the compounds BPC and TB that well. I haven't studied them that well, but I know a lot about erythropoietin. I studied that a lot. I'm very interested in erythropoietin peptides. By the way, if anyone watches this and you're an entrepreneurial person, try to make an erythropoietin peptide. You can go to my blog and figure out how to. They're not all patented. And what's interesting thing about them, you can get a peptide where you don't get erythropoiesis, you don't get more red blood cells, so your blood doesn't thicken and you don't have to dump your blood out. But erythropoietin has tremendous angiogenesis properties through the JAK-STAT pathway. So that's one thing.
It also acts as a separate growth factor for anabolism, I believe, and whether that's indirect from the red blood cells or the EPO itself, erythropoietin. So if you want to recover an injury, there will be a temporary period with the TB500, the BPC, and perhaps Anavar to promote a little bit of collagen synthesis, but at the efficacious dose, 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams, not the burn victim dose of 180 to 240 milligrams per day.
Oh, they take that much, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's very high.
Well,
Yeah,
we
it's
should
very
talk
nice.
more about Anavar. We'll talk more about Anavar when we get to pre-workouts later. It's an interesting subject. But another thing I want to mention is growth factors. What do growth factors do in the body? Everybody thinks about growth factors splitting our cells up. They do other things also. Growth factors, and this is something I talked to Derek about because I'm interested also in the process of hair loss and whether minoxidil can actually prevent, because it's thought not to prevent hairs from dying, but I find it hard to believe that having more growth factors from blood in the scalp around the hairs can't in some small way prevent the hairs from dying. Maybe not a very obvious way. Generally in the body, in the brain, I know very well, growth factors, brain derived neurotrophic factor, all growth factors, nerve growth factors protect cells from apoptosis, from death. So when you get an injury, if you have higher growth hormone levels, you'll get less cells dying, not just cells dividing. So two different things. And you can get the growth factor from growth hormone, or you could get your blood, as we said earlier, closer to the area, which is why right now I've injured my hand twice or three. I'm trying to do it 3 times a day, but twice a day I'm putting my hand in ice water and then in hot water, ice water, hot water, repeatedly, and then getting the blood in there, because that's the key factor, you know. And the final thing is our question from the audience was actually about MK677. The guy was asking, should somebody use MK677 if they do a surgery to recover from the surgery? I think that MK677 is not really what you want. That's a ghrelin mimetic. Ghrelin is a stress hormone. Ghrelin will turn on your sympathetic nervous drive. If you're not using beta blockers and all that, you're putting yourself in a stress state. I use MK677 to upregulate dopamine in the brain because of the sympathetic nervous drive. Growth hormone is separate from ghrelin. We need to start thinking of MK677 as ghrelin. Ghrelin does produce growth hormone, but it also produces ghrelin. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I was thinking logically, well, like as far as like differentiating the different impacts of GH inherently versus the downstream IGF-1, like in terms of injury recovery, what is it? Mainly the growth factor 1 that's going to be inducing the properties you want in a recovery aspect, rather than the, like, obviously from a GH aspect, and you think of lipolysis, that's more from the GH parent compound, right, versus the IGF-1. So my thought process before getting into which is more responsible for the recovery, I was thinking for you, because you don't want your IGF-1 severely elevated, MK is, like, from what I've seen personally, disproportionately good at raising like your GH levels versus your IGF-1. So the IGF-1 elevation is not that significant, but the GH you get, I personally notice my hair grows much faster on MK677 than on a high dose even of high quality GH. Really? So yeah, every single person I've talked to that compares the two notices the same thing. But your IGF-1 on paper will be much lower. It'll be within the therapeutic reference range, all but at the top end.
Well, Derek, I have a little secret for you. My IGF-1 receptors don't work, so it doesn't matter.
Oh,
I'm deficient. I could have as much IGF-1 as I want.
I was thinking hypothetically, if it mattered, you would want to keep if you wanted to keep your IGF-1 lower for whatever reason, the MK might make sense, because the actual GH properties, I do find, at least in some context, when it comes to the fountain of youth qualities you commonly hear about, like the hair growth, I notice it more profoundly from MK. However, the ghrelin aspect, totally forgot, even though I've literally wrote an article on it about how it causes, like, literally can induce PTSD type like symptoms essentially. And at least in rodents, it was using like that fear model or whatever it was to induce like literally induce PTSD in them. So for somebody trying to recover from anything, obviously it's probably not an ideal choice, anything that leverages ghrelin specifically. So I would agree entirely on avoiding it.
Do you think also that the water retention and the potential for insulin resistance would be kind of counterintuitive to recover a particular injury? Because if you get additional water retention and this insulin resistance, then a lot of the nutrients are not going to end up in the tissue you're trying to recover.
Yeah, the MK seems disproportionately bad in terms of getting you insulin resistant quickly.
But you don't have to inject, so it's easy.
Well, because it thinks you're hungry. It thinks you're starving. That's what happens when you fast. The first 2 days of the fast, that's MK.
Like, you guys don't worry about the GLP-1 agonism and chronically like releasing insulin from that.